Welcome to an exclusive interview. Ashwini Vide, Managing Director, Mumbai Metro Rail Corporation. Madam, please tell us about your school, college days, where you born and brought up.
I was born in a place called Sangli, basically from Maharashtra. My father was working with State Bank of India in mid-level managerial capacity, so he was on a transferable job. He used to get transferred to various places every 3 years. So that is why I have done my schooling at different places, like Tasla, Jaisingpur, then Sangli. My college education I did it in Sangli and then Pune,
Okay.
and then I appeared for my UPSC.
So which batch you are from?
I am from 99 batch.
1995. What is your date of birth, madam?
That is 25th May.
Did you always wanted to become an IAS officer?
Yes, kind of. When I cleared my 10th, I appeared in the merit list of SSC board at that point of time, and that was the time when I had to take a decision which sector I wanted to do my career in. And then since I had liking for literature, I wanted to do my graduation in arts. And then after that, when I was looking for various career options, then I thought after completing either my graduation or post-graduation in arts, then I should opt for civil services. So that was a decision which was taken when I passed my 10th, and then I pursued with the same.
Can you elaborate on your achievements so far in various postings?
Now I have put in almost 20 years of service, and when I joined IAS, then I did my probation from Kolhapur district after getting allotted to Maharashtra cadre. Then I was assistant collector in Ichalkaranji, that was a subdivision in Kolhapur district.
Okay. Ichalkaranji.
Ichalkaranji. So it's a textile city of Maharashtra. So there my main role was obviously handling various revenue functions at the subdivision level. So various revenue related activities, in addition to that, lot of law and order situations I had to handle. I also had to handle various cooperative sector elections and a lot of rehabilitation work as well. And that was, being a textile city, it was always having problems of industrial unrest. And because of that, there used to be many strikes, bunds, and a lot of issues related to the local textile mills and sugar factories. So I had to handle, I got an exposure to a lot of law and order situations which I could handle. That was a good exposure in revenue related activities. After that, I shifted to Sindhudurg district in Konkan as Chief Executive Officer of Zilla Parishad. That was a good learning experience because Sindhudurg is a very disciplined district, and it is probably one of the most literate districts and high on all social indicators from Maharashtra. So that was a good learning experience in rural development, which I carried to Nagpur, where I became CEO Zilla Parishad again in Nagpur. And that was one of the most fulfilling assignments I had in Nagpur, because with my learnings from Sindhudurg, I could contribute to a substantial extent to the rural development programs conducted by state government as well as central government in Nagpur district. My thrust was on women's empowerment as well as all other sectors of rural development, including the completion of rural infrastructure projects, then malnutrition issues, primary education, primary health, even animal health. And just to indicate my achievements there, I had got completed all the incomplete works, almost more than 5,000 Indira Awas houses were completed, then the incomplete wells were completed. After that, I undertook a water conservation program on a large scale, and Vanrai Bandhara was some kind of a very small scale and low cost water conservation measure, which was introduced by an NGO called Vanrai, which was led by Mr. Mohan Dharia, who was a very well-known figure. But Vanrai per se could not replicate that experiment, and Mohan Dharia had in fact asked me in one of the meetings that if I could take it up, then this would be a major water conservation measure which will benefit the Nagpur district. And Nagpur being an orange growing district, a lot of groundwater extraction had happened at that point of time, and somehow that recharging of water was required. groundwater was required. And so we took up this Vanrai Bandara experiment on a very informal manner through people's participation. And that gained a lot of momentum in a short while. And we could create thousands of Vanrai Bandaras in a short while with the help of people. And a lot of water was stored in those Bandaras at that point of time. Nagpur was also a district where there were a series of Kolhapur type Bandaras, but they were also dry because of some structural issues. But there also we actually borrowed some principles of Pandrahi Bandara and rejuvenated this one Kolhapur type Bandaras, KT waves also. And on account of that, in that year, Nagpur was full of water everywhere. Lot of groundwater recharging could take place. People could do some fishing also on that water. Then drinking water situation improved, and it was appreciated by government as well. Then I did a lot of work on the strengthening of women's self-help group, and then I had, with the help of my colleagues, had started a marketing center for these self-help groups, where they could bring their products and artifacts for sale. So that was again a very fulfilling assignment. After that, I was for a short while, I was Additional Division Commissioner of Nagpur, where I could handle a lot of judicial, semi-quasi-judicial matters. Then I came to Mumbai as first as Deputy Secretary and then as Joint Secretary to Governor of Maharashtra. And I was there for a long time, almost 5 years. And in that capacity, I could serve the state to basically address the issue of regional imbalance, because the Governor of Maharashtra has a special provision or special powers under Article 371(2), by which he has to ensure the regional equality. Because Maharashtra, when Vidarbha came from Central Province and this Marathwada came from Hyderabad state, and all these three provinces joined, and Maharashtra was formed in the year 1960. That time there was an understanding that on no account there should be any regional imbalance or regional inequality, and Governor was entrusted with this responsibility of ensuring that. So in the year 1994, that provision of the Constitution was invoked, and since then it was the responsibility of the Governor's office that the resources are distributed equitably among the three regions. And that was a very major responsibility, because
who was the governor that day?
that time Mr. Mohammad Fazal was there for a long time. After that I also worked with Mr. S.M. Krishna and then also Mr. Jamil. So these were the three His Excellencies I served, and during that time we ensured that the state's resources, which are basically the planned funds, they are equitably distributed among the three regions, and that was a major responsibility. I got an exposure to the policy level issues. I was responsible for drafting of the directives which Governor issues to the government, and that was a good exposure. After that I came to MMRDA, and that was my first entry in the infrastructure sector. I came to MMRDA as Joint Commissioner, and then I became Additional Commissioner when I got promoted as Secretary. And again my tenure in MMRDA was 5.5 years, and that was again one of the most satisfying assignments, I would say. Because I got exposed to a lot of mega infrastructure projects, and I got a chance to start those projects and complete those projects as well. And I got an opportunity to not only to implement the projects, but even to conceive, even to bid the projects, even to structure the projects financially, both PPP as well as EPC contracts. And in that capacity, I was responsible for completion of the Eastern Freeway, all important flyovers in the city on Ambedkar Road as well as both the express highways. After that, the elevated road connecting to airport, plus phase 1 of Mundore. I was also responsible for rehabilitation of all the project affected people. Then the sanitation campaign we launched on a large scale as Nirmal sanitation campaign for the entire Mumbai metropolitan region. And plus I got an opportunity to structure the project called MTHL, which is a much talked about project in Mumbai on PPP basis. Then also I worked for a regional landfill site. That project was to be structured on a PPP basis. So I got a very good and in-depth understanding of the infrastructure projects and got a satisfaction of completing these projects as well. Then government gave me an opportunity to work in Mantralaya as Secretary of School Education. That was for a year. And there also then this was basically social infrastructure. So I dealt with various problems in education department, tried to basically contribute towards the improvement in quality of education. We started the concept of quality sale. Then I also framed the CSR policy for education. And then we created the structure. I could involve many industries through their CSR verticals, and got in fact Mr. Ratan Tata, then the entire Tata group, as well as other industries who are already working through their CSR verticals in education sector. I could basically generate or harness those synergies, and then we could do a lot of experiments in education. But after a year's time, then I again got an opportunity to work in the infrastructure sector. I was brought as first independent MD of Mumbai Metro Rail Corporation, and since January this year, I have been working on this Mumbai Metro Rail Corridor 3 project, which is a underground metro project.
What was the most challenging assignment for you so far?
I would say my assignment as CEO in Nagpur,
Okay.
and then of course projects in MMRDA. But now when I look back and look at the current assignment, then I feel the implementation or execution of Metro 3 is probably the most challenging assignment.
Okay. How do you take this opportunity in your career as a managing director of Mumbai Metro Rail Corporation?
Of course, this is a very important opportunity which I have got, and that basically speaks about the exposure or expertise which I have achieved so far as implementation of infrastructure project in Mumbai is concerned. And I have got an opportunity to apply those learnings from my earlier assignment to this project, because this project is very challenging. And if those learnings could be applied, probably we'll be able to address these challenges in a much better fashion. And that's what I'm trying to do. I feel this is a very important opportunity which I have got, and I would like to basically make use of it.
What are the projects that will change the face of Mumbai transport?
There are many projects. Actually, MMRDA, for that matter, has been working on a very planned infrastructure development, not only for Mumbai but for entire Mumbai metropolitan region. And based on the earlier studies, MMRDA, some 6 years back, has prepared basically a comprehensive transport study for entire Mumbai metropolitan region, which speaks about the infrastructural requirement for the region, depending on the concentration of population, the location of the employment centers, and how the people are going to move from one place to another. And they have done projections up to 2031, and taking into account 3 horizon years, that is 2011, 2021 and 2031.
Okay.
They had created certain scenarios, and based on that they had worked out which infrastructure projects could be taken up. So now when we work in infrastructure sector, by and large we are working on that planning which was done by MMRDA. And if you look at it, the initial focus was obviously improvement of the road infrastructure. That is why MMRDA also took up these projects like MUIP, where all the arterial roads in the city, where basically their capacity was enhanced. Previously, this Eastern and Western Express Highway were actually non-existing. They were there, but their capacity was not that much. So that focus was given. Then on these express highways, all the junctions were then tackled, and a series of flyovers were constructed. Eastern Freeway or Sahar elevated road or other elevated roads. So that was an attempt to basically create an unhindered kind of a road connectivity. So these projects have already changed face of Mumbai. Including your Bandra sealing, which was done by MSRDC, then Eastern Freeway, Sahar elevated road, and all other road projects, including the flyovers, which were completed by MMRDA in last few years. They have already changed the face of Mumbai. But MMRDA was also aware, and everybody must understand that improving the road infrastructure only is not going to help Mumbai for a long. Because the more you improve the road, the more vehicles come on the road and fly. And ultimately, that is not a remedy or solution to the road congestion. And in fact, day by day, as the vehicles on the road increase, the road congestion also increase, despite the fact that the lanes are. So then now the focus is on public transport. Why we went for road infrastructure earlier? Because Mumbai has been blessed with a very robust public transport system by the Britishers themselves. And the suburban rail system is a more than 150-year-old system here, and that has already helped Mumbai in carrying so many people. Almost 65 lakh people commute every day by suburban system. But now that suburban system has started giving way, because that is not adequate, and there is an inherent limitation on how much you can expand the existing suburban rail system. Plus, it is only now north-south direction, so east-west connectivity becomes a problem, and that is traveling at grade. So expansion at grade is also a problem because that much land is not there in Mumbai. And people also travel in subhuman conditions. So now the projects which will change the face of Mumbai will be such urban public transport project which will help Mumbaikars commute faster. Because Mumbai is always going to remain the most important financial center of not only the state but of the country. People are going to come here looking for the job opportunities. So unless and until we improve our public transport system, and that is why I think Mumbai Metro Line 3 itself is the, I would vote for it, that it is the most important project which will change the face of Mumbai, which will be followed by other metro projects.
Metro 3 project is about to start, as you said. So, kindly comment on the development.
Mumbai Metro 3 is a 33.5 kilometer long underground metro project, and it connects Nariman Point or Kolaba in South Mumbai to Seeds in North Mumbai. And while doing that, it also connects the BKC, which is a very important employment center, and domestic as well as international airport. And that is why it is a very important alignment. So this has 33.5 kilometers long twin tunnels, because this is a completely underground metro, and it has about 27 stations. So we are going to have station almost every kilometer. So that is going to basically reduce the requirement of further last mile connectivity and adopting another mode of transport for that. At the moment, we are basically in a preparatory phase. Our civil tenders have already been floated. We have received the civil tenders. The cost is being analyzed, and maybe in another month or month and a half's time, we will be in a position to finalize our civil tenders and probably issue the work orders. This is a rail-based transport system, so obviously there are other system packages which include the rolling stock, that is the railways, the trains which we need. This is a 25 kV AC traction system, so we need to get the traction system, then the other electrical systems, plus the automatic fare collection system, signaling and telecommunication systems, plus the car depot needs to be prepared. So there are other 7-8 system packages. So tender process for those packages is ongoing. We are in the process of pre-qualification on these bids. In addition to that, the project needs a lot of preparatory activities, because we need a lot of land, about 70-75 hectares of land for a temporary period during construction, because later on we don't need land as the railway is going to be below the ground. But till such time that we construct, we need a lot of land. So fortunately, last 7-8 months we have been working very hard on this land, getting land in possession, so that there are no other hindrances once the work starts. And with the help of government, with the help of the CM's war room, and a dedicated team working in CM's office to help us or facilitate these issues of ours, we have been able to get possession of almost 70-80% of the land. And we have resolved most of the issues which could be of a great headache later on. So now, having resolved those issues, once our civil work starts, then we will be in a position to complete the project in a period of 4.5 to 5 years.
Okay, that's great. What is your planning about the rehabilitation of citizens in metro affected areas?
In Mumbai, we have a convention of rehabilitating project affected people in a particular way. And the legacy is of a World Bank project called MUTP, where on in the insistence of World Bank, state government has prepared an RNR policy, rehabilitation policy, and by that policy we give a free house to any structure which comes in the way, whether the person owns it or not. But if it is so far it is an eligible structure, we give. Same is the policy for the commercial structure, and this is applicable to all those slum structures which are there on government lands or even private lands, which are there by way of investment, but they are there for a long time and they have got some rights on that land. So the same policy is being adopted for this project also, and in this project we need about 2600 structures to be removed. Out of that, about 16 to 1700 structures are slum structures. They are the slums, and they are to be rehabilitated in the vicinity where the housing stock is available. So we have already identified that housing stock. We have held a lot of public consultations, and we have shown people that they would be rehabilitated at those locations, and people are generally happy about it because that is in the close vicinity. They have given their initial willingness. So as and when our work actually starts, and when the people are really required to be shifted, so we will be shifting those people at those locations. There are about 700 to 800 structures which are not slum structures. They are the structures on private land and owned privately, either as owners or tenants. And the major concentration of these structures are in Girgaon and Kalbadevi area of Mumbai, which is also poised for redevelopment. So we are trying to, for these people there is no straight-jacketed policy. We can straight away go and acquire those lands, but here we have adopted a very innovative approach. Instead of going for a very conventional way of just acquiring those lands and giving the either monetary compensation or whatever to people, we are trying to basically align with the redevelopment which is likely to happen there. So we appointed a specialized consultant to look at the redevelopment and rehabilitation of these people in situ after exhausting our requirement, because our requirement in that area is very minuscule. That is required only during construction and only for the entry and exits of the stations. But because of the close vicinity of these buildings and lot of the congested, that area being very congested, even to get that space for a temporary period, we need to demolish certain buildings. So while doing that, we are trying to ensure that the buildings are redeveloped in a very proper way and people get their rightful house, which is mandated by certain development control regulations. So for that we are trying to make a systematic effort, and we are people who are initially quite in opposition of this idea, and there was a lot of hue and cry about it because people thought that we will just throw them out of their houses and rehabilitate them at some far off places. But now we have tackled it in a very different manner, and people are getting assured that if they cooperate properly, then they would get an house there itself, while the completion of the project is ensured.
Does the public consultation meeting organized in a transparent manner? Many people often allege it up being otherwise.
No, absolutely transparent manner. In fact, nobody can allege us, at least as far as this project is concerned, because first of all, this project is being funded by an international agency called JICA, and international standards, especially on environment as well as the social aspects, are always far better than what we normally follow in our projects. So all these processes are under their review and very strictly scrutinized by them. Even people have the right to raise these issues to JICA or their auditors. They have done it also time and again, and we have been in a position to convince JICA auditors that we have followed very transparent processes. And we have conducted a series of public consultations which we have documented in a very proper manner. And all those consultations, the minutes have been issued, they have been shared with the fact. People also in Mumbai are extremely aware, and they will not let any organization to do something in a very hush-hush manner. In fact, when we share the minutes, people react to that also. If some points are missing, which they feel important, then accordingly we have modified them also. So we have been extremely transparent in the process.
In what manner will JICA's, Japan International Corporation participation will help in metro rail project?
This is a very important contribution they are making because the project being a completely underground project, the capital cost is very high and the requirement of capital investments is very high, which is beyond the capacity of the state's budget or even MMRDA's own budget. Now, what are the options before us? Either not to do the project or try to go and reduce the cost by building a elevated metro. But the area through which we are traversing or this particular corridor is passing through, that is so congested and in a way it's a heritage area plus the business districts where you can't take a metro in an elevated manner. And to achieve the efficiency in terms of travel as well as the proper land use, you need to go underground. Now, because we have an underground structure, the cost is almost 3 to 3.5 times more than an elevated structure. Now, how to fund such big ticket and capital intensive project could be a problem for any state government.
Okay.
In such scenario, agencies like JICA are extremely helpful because they make the funding available at a very low rate. So for this project, which is about 23,136 crore project, it is as high as that, JICA is funding to the tune of 57%. That is only at the rate of 1.4%. So of course, this loan is in foreign currency. So obviously there will be some hedging cost, but still that would be much cheaper than any other loan you would get. And it is much better than giving this kind of funding through the state budget, because then state can use its own funds for so many other things. And once we get this loan at such cheaper rate, then the company itself, when it starts its operation, then company itself in a position to repay the loan, because the terms are very favorable. There is a 10-year moratorium, and then we have to repay the loan in 20 years. So the company will be fully operational after 5 years. It will start earning its own revenues, and then we will be in a position to repay the loan. So from that point of view, JICA's contribution is very important. In addition to that, as I told you earlier, these international funding agencies are always more sensitive and more cautious about the environmental issues, the social issues involved in the project.
Okay.
And that is why they make us have very transparent policies for that and do everything in a better fashion. So from that point of view, their contribution is important. Third is they have their own standard guidelines on the bidding processes.
Okay.
And then we have to follow the international bidding process, which again has a lot of transparency. There are no interventions in it, and the proper price discovery happens in their processes. So from all this point of view, I think JICA's contribution is quite a lot.
Underground metro, this feasibility is there. There is the feasibility.
Of course, because no project can be taken up without the feasibility study. This metro, when we did the detailed project report, that time only the feasibility has been accepted. And there are two concepts, FIRR and EIRR, that is Economic Internal Rate of Return. So that is to the tune of 17.9%, so it is very high. So the economic benefits of these projects actually outweigh the costs involved in the project in the long run. For example, this project is going to basically take out more than 6 lakh vehicles from the road per day. So it would bring in saving about 2.5 lakh liters of petrol or fuel every day. So if you calculate the benefits of these kind of things, then you quantify them in monetary terms, then you come to the overall costs and benefits of this project. And then if you weigh both the things, then we have carried out that detailed exercise, and that has given this figure of 17.9% of the economic IRR, which is very, very good.
Right. Who are the main bidders for the current metro project? 3?
See, we have shortlisted 9 consortia, and there are all major Indian players, plus there are foreign players. So the companies like L&T, Tata Projects, Afcons, then J. Kumar, then HCC, Soma, So all these important players in Indian market, they are there, and they are partnered with the foreign bidders. So we have about 5 Chinese companies, then one Taiwanese company, CEC, which is there is a Turkish company, then there is a Russian company. So these companies are there, and out of these 9 shortlisted bidders, actually 7 companies actually submitted their bids,
Acha, okay.
which are being assessed now.
First comes first. As Delhi Metro is older than Mumbai, you being a director of Mumbai Metro Rail Corporation, even if implement new things or come up with some new idea, there are chances that you won't get credit. Have you faced such situation? In what manner does it affect you?
No, I mean whether to get credit or no, but I think when we work in government, we hardly work for the credit because that is a part of our job. Now today I am appointed as MD MMRC, so it is my job. Tomorrow I will be in some other position. So till the time I am here, it is my duty to get the project going. Now I may get credit, I may not, because you don't know future how it is going to. And I am, in fact, here we even are not trying to get any credit because we know that Delhi Metro Rail Corporation is the pioneering entity in the metro sector. And in fact, they have become such a major guiding force now for all metro corporations. In fact, we look up to them. And they have now commissioned more than 200 kilometers of metro network. Another 150, 200 kilometers is under construction. So obviously they have done so many times more better job than us. Plus they have faced all kinds of situations and they have learned a lot in that process. So their learning experiences are actually the major guiding force for us, and we take their help. We have people who have earlier worked in Delhi, and most of the issues they have settled. Only one benefit probably Mumbai Metro Rail Corporation has is Delhi also has not implemented such a long underground project. So, because none of Delhi's corridor is fully underground. So, fully underground projects have its own challenges, and that too working in Mumbai has more challenges. So, probably if we successfully complete the projects, that thing will go to our credit.
While the CTS, Comprehensive Transport Study, recommends development of 450 km metro rail, MMRC is concentrating on the mere 146.50 stretch. Will it help ease the traffic?
No, see, this 450 kilometers is for the entire Mumbai metropolitan region.
Okay.
And that is not that you have to take it at one go. Because you have to do it in phased manner, where the actual need is. Because when we talk about 450 kilometers of network, you also have to see the investment requirement for that. So you can't just blindly put in money, and you won't be having that kind of money also. So you have to do prioritizing, you have to do phasing. So this 146 kilometers is basically for the greater Mumbai, where today the traffic congestion is more. And in MMR, yes, metro is required and connectivity is required, but initially the road connectivity itself is adequate. Because today even that connectivity is missing. So when you do create any transport infrastructure, you do it in a phased manner. First, the cheaper mode of transport. If that is not adequate, then you add another layer on it. If that is not adequate, then you add another layer. So that way, the remaining metro network in MMR will come as per priority. And Mumbai Metro Rail Corporation was founded for basically the Mumbai Metro Line 3, that is the underground project. The rest are definitely being contemplated and prioritized at the level of state government and MMR. So as per the requirement of the region, they will take up these projects one by one.
Do you think that the operational Warsaw Ghatkopar corridor has eased vehicular traffic at the route?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because that is probably one of the most efficient alignments in the Metro Master Plan, because that connects east and west, which is missing in Mumbai. And the distance between Warsaw and Ghatkopar, which otherwise by any other mode of transport was 70 minutes, which has gone down to 20 minutes. That is a major saving, and definitely people have switched over from other modes of transport to Mumbai, and it has eased the traffic congestion, as well as people's overall transport experiences is also enhanced.
The Virar-Borivali rail route is densely populated. Had MMRC targeted it first, it would have made good returns. What is your vision?
Again, that is for the region, because Virar Borivali, that is part of the suburban rail system, and that is not in the jurisdiction of MMRD or MMRC. That is with the railways, and railways themselves are trying their best to improve the capacity of the existing suburban rail system. That is why the MUTP project was formed. And today also they are talking of MUTP after completion of MUTP phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So that is also being independently handled by Indian Railways.
Okay. Your color scheme was accepted and implemented by National School of Design, Ahmedabad. How it all happened?
That was for monorail when I was working in MMRDA, the National Commissioner, and handling monorail project. Then we had entrusted this responsibility to National School of Design, and their students actually basically prepared this for us. So they gave various color schemes for exterior and interior of Mumbai monorail. And then out of that, then we selected those vibrant colors of pink, blue and green. And even their internal interior decoration was also aligned with that color scheme.
How do you evaluate your aesthetic senses, and can you reconstruct the stages of its development?
No, see, no. As far as the public transport projects are concerned, the first and foremost importance is given to the safety and other technical aspects. After having achieved that, then you look at some of the aesthetic issues. They would be basically conceived in the form of, as I told you, the interiors or some decoration of the stations. And here also in Metro Line 3, there would be some opportunities where we could basically very aesthetically design the interiors of the station, interiors of the train, and we would definitely try for it. Now we have made some extra efforts to design our logo, and MMRC's old logo was there, but now we have changed the logo. We have made it more colorful and attractive. And those color combinations and color schemes will definitely be used on our actual trains also, as well as the stations. In Mumbai, we are also planning to have some kind of, whether some of the stations which are passing through the heritage areas, in case we get an opportunity to utilize that space to display those photographs of those heritage structure, or create some kind of a timeline for those structures. So that also we are trying to attend. Some heritage architects we have involved in, and when at appropriate time we will take up that project as well.
What are the challenges in front of Mumbai Metro, the most you are facing?
Mumbai Metro 3 is actually full of challenges, because this is a very long corridor, and it is passing through very congested areas. So we have to deal with all kinds of people and their own ideas about public transport, because people generally are status quoist, and although they face a lot of problems in their daily commuting, still they don't want to make any change, because probably their life is already so full of issues that they don't want any change in their situation. So nobody wants they want the projects, they don't oppose the project, but they don't want it in their backyards. So that syndrome, that NIMBY syndrome I call, that we face a lot. But for last 7-8 months we have worked so much on that. We have approached the people, we have tried to convince them by using all media, not only the print media, electronic media, but social media. We have a very strong Facebook page, we have a Twitter handle, we are talking to people. So that is one thing. Secondly, of course, there are environmental challenges, land issues. We are passing through the heritage areas. Plus we have to deal with so many government and state government agencies. So there are innumerable challenges, but we are dealing with them also, and we are getting help from all quarters to address and deal with those challenges.
What are your expectations from Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Devendra Fadnavis, for upcoming metro projects?
I can't have any expectations from the Chief Minister, but because I work under him and I am part of the government has entrusted certain responsibility with me. But I am really happy and I appreciate the kind of personal attention this project gets from the Honorable Chief Minister, because actually there is too much on his platter. Nevertheless, he gives a very special attention to this project. He has created a war room in his own office where about 23 projects are very closely monitored, and Metro 3 is one among them. This is being one of the biggest projects, it obviously gets more attention. Small but dedicated team in CM's office actually help us in getting all these issues resolved, which are basically the land related issues, coordination issues with other agencies, and CM himself keeps on helping us and encouraging us to take this project forward.
Mumbai is a global city and traffic problem is worst nowadays. How Metro will help to Mumbaikars? As you said
I have
earlier.
already explained this to you. Mumbai's traffic, if we don't create further public transport facilities, one day Mumbai will be at a standstill, because the roads are getting congested every day, despite a lot of investment has been made in improving the road structure. And Mumbai's lifeline, which is the suburban rail system, that is already oversaturated. And railways are making their all-out efforts to improve that, enhance the capacity, but there are some inherent limitations. That is why a metro suburban train which is having the capacity of carrying 2,000 people actually has to carry 5,000 people. Now that is not a very healthy experience to travel in a suburban train. Plus safety aspects are very critical, and people fall down on the trains, then while crossing the trains also. And every day almost 10-15 people die on tracks, and almost 50 to 60% because of the overcrowding. Now, if we have to avoid this, we have to increase the efficiency of the people, increase their productivity, then probably we need to give them better public transport. Besides the suburban train, what happens? It is unidirectional. It can't go in east-west direction, and then that is why people have to have one more mode of transport to achieve the last mile connectivity. Besides, suburban stations are quite far from each other. Whereas when you have metro, then what happens? Metro traverses across the city in various directions, and plus these metro trains get connected to the suburban rail network also. So because of which what happens, you get a proper grid. People can travel from anywhere to anywhere, and metro stations are very close to each other. Just maybe maximum distance is 1 kilometer. So people can walk. After getting down at the station, they can walk to their respective destination. They don't have to take any other mode of transport. So it eases, basically, it gives a very safe and comfortable ride. These are AC trains, state of the art kind of technology, very safe because it is under surveillance. So we'll again have the very latest technology in terms of signaling and communication, telecommunication. There will be basically safety doors. So the trains will, there is no question of anybody falling on the track. So basically it is a much better experience than traveling in a usual public transport system. Plus many people who would otherwise take the road transport would switch over to public transport, which will add their own safety, comfort and health as well. So there are innumerable social and economic benefits of having the metro. And that is why it should be there for now.
Okay. Don't you think that metro should be all route parallel to Western Central and Harbour to control the more crowds?
No, how can they be parallel? In fact, they need to be crisscrossing them. They need to be perpendicular to them. Because if you have just parallel roads, then you are not going to achieve anything. In fact, that is the problem in Mumbai transport. So you just have north and south kind of connectivity by suburban train. And you need to go to east and west, and again you have to either change the mode of transport, you have to take another. So in fact, metro corridor should be in such a manner where actually there is a need to take the public transport. Now for example, in this corridor, we are going to have connectivity among 6 employment centers. Today, suburban train doesn't go to Cup Parade, or for that matter, it doesn't come to BKC, it doesn't go to SAVE, it doesn't go to airport. Now these are the areas which give the largest employment. So people have to actually reach these destinations. Now if there is no proper mass transit system connecting to these centers, there is going to be a chaos on the road. So metro has to go, if there is any new mode of public transport, it has to go to such areas where there is a need to take the public transport.